So if I told you in America there was a mayor who became so powerful that they were legally the judge, jury, and executioner in the local courts, even appointing their own prosecutor, would you believe me? You may even think I'm crazy. Check this out.
Instead of having a traffic or municipal court, the law allows Fenton to have mayor's court, where the mayor acts as judge, jury, and even appoints his own prosecutor.
I mean, you have the mayor as the decision maker, essentially the judge, and the results of those decisions, which are minor municipal offenses only, but they're criminal in nature, and they result in the assessment of fines that go to the city, of which the mayor is the chief administrative officer.
Now, on top of that, if I told you that thousands of dollars were missing from this town's accounts, would you believe me too? Listen to this.
New financial troubles identified in the latest audit of the village of Fenton. While it shows Mayor Eddie Alfred has paid back about half of what he owes the city after getting overpaid thousands back in 2016, there are new financial concerns. KPLC's Drew Marine breaks down the numbers.
The mayor tasked with paying back $15,000, missing traffic citation money, and adjusted utility bills. Those are just some of the findings in the latest audit.
I think I found one of the most corrupt towns in America. Welcome to Fenton, Louisiana. Population 226. Today we are talking about a small village in Louisiana called Fenton. It's a tiny community, about 226 residents, and they live in 141 different households. It's located in the southwest corner of the state of Louisiana. Now, the median household income in Fenton is about $21,000. Now, the town's budget, which is shocking, is about $1.5 million. Now, for reference, that means to have that type of budget for that small of a town, every resident would have to pay about $10,000 every year in local taxes. And this is not including federal and state taxes. So we're talking about 51% of the income for each resident, each household would have to go to taxes to have a $1.5 million budget. Now, their town budget hasn't always been $1.5 million. The town's general fund only used to have about $9,000 in it, versus today's $1.5 million. Here's a video from 2013 where the current mayor, when he first got into office, he explained the difference between the general fund when he got into office and where it was at back in 2013 when this video was shot.
I poured my heart out into this community. In less than 4 years, when I took office, this town's general fund was only at $9,000. Now we have almost $300,000.
So you may be saying, well, how did the town go from making $9,000 a year to $1.5 million a year? Well, they decided to raise money by finding drivers who drive through the town, and also by violating their constitutional rights to due process. Now, to understand all this, I have to introduce you to a legal concept called mayor's court. So mayor's court is where a small town's local mayor acts as judge, jury, and executioner in legal matters. So just so you understand what mayor's court is, here's a quick explanation of mayor's court.
Louisiana and Ohio are the only two states in the country with what are called mayor's courts. The mayor can act as not only the mayor, but also as judge and jury, holding trials to enforce ordinances and imposing sentences and fines, mostly on traffic violations. We found there's very little oversight for these courts. There are hundreds in Louisiana, but there is a potential conflict that could mean big money and big problems for many communities in Acadiana.
Now, in the town of Fenton, their city budget is about $1.5 million. This pays for all the city salaries, including police and even the mayor. 226 people don't make enough to fund this type of operation. So about 90% of this budget comes from mayor's court.
Fines and fees that run through mayor's court essentially run the town. In the last year reviewed by auditors, more than 90% of the village of Fenton's revenue, $1.3 million, was collected from fines and fees, the vast majority from traffic tickets.
90+% of their town budget, village budget, is from tickets from people like you.
So of course they're gonna give people tickets.
Because what?
They get revenue from it. And it's not fair.
And if you're someone like Teresa Parker who thinks she was wrongfully ticketed, you need to convince this person you're innocent. Eddie Alfred, the mayor of Fenton, who is also the courtroom judge.
So for those of you who don't see the issue with this immediately, There's a huge conflict of interest here, right? The mayor is the head of the police, and he also runs the town's budget. So, meaning the mayor has a vested interest in issuing as many tickets as possible and finding those same people guilty of violations so they can pay the fines, even if they're not guilty. It's a classic conflict of interest. Here is the mayor himself explaining how important it is for his police department to write as many tickets as possible.
Fenton makes more than 90% of its annual revenue from court.
This is a perfect example of why it's unfair and exactly why they have it. This is a revenue generating mechanism. It's not about justice. It's not about efficiency. It's not about fairness. It's about making money.
Tulane Emeritus Law Professor Joel Friedman says this audio recording proves his point.
On black.
At a September meeting with some town employees, the mayor complained police weren't writing enough tickets. That's despite records showing officers wrote an average of about 16 tickets per day for a town of just 226 people. And those tickets help bring the town lots of money. The $1.3 million from fines and fees helped make Fenton's budget about 5 times as high as towns with similar populations.
Our main income is ticket traffic ticket, and they ain't getting written. So that's not no good thing right there.
So you may be asking, hey Nate, why hasn't anybody sued over this whole mayor's court thing? This seems obviously illegal or unconstitutional. It's unethical, to say the least. Well, I'm glad you asked, because yes, somebody has sued, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. Here's what happened.
1,100 miles away in Monroeville, Ohio. The year was 1972. A man by the name of Clarence Ward was faced with a traffic violation and thought it was biased that the mayor, who was in charge of the town's finances, was deciding his guilt or innocence and subsequent fines. His question, did the mayor see guilt as a financial incentive for his budget? Ward took his case all the way to the United States Supreme Court and won. The courts ruled that in this particular case, because a, quote, major part of the town's income came from traffic fines, the mayor was biased. We crunched the numbers. In Monroeville, Ohio, that major part of the town's income from mayor's court fines totaled 42%.
Now really think about that. The Supreme Court found that if fines accounted for 42% of your town's budget, it's unconstitutional for the mayor to be the judge. It's a huge conflict of interest. It actually violates people's due process rights under the Constitution. In Fenton, it accounts for 90%, right? So it's obviously crazy. So based on the legal precedent set forth by the U.S. Supreme Court, what they're doing in Fenton is blatantly unconstitutional, meaning that the mayor and the town are violating every single driver's constitutional rights. According to a report from ProPublica, it found that the court disproportionately targets out-of-state drivers, especially those from Texas, who make up about 70% of their cases. The court also charges higher fees and fines than other courts in the state, and often adds additional charges for things like late payments, court costs, and administrative fees. But what about the mayor who oversees the mayor's court? What qualifications does the mayor have? Well, he doesn't really have any. See, you don't need a law degree or anything like that to be a mayor, to be the judge in a mayor's court. Only thing you need is a one-day training course. The proceedings aren't even recorded. Check this out.
Mayor Alford presides over the court, which is allowed by law. He doesn't have a law degree, and we couldn't find evidence he graduated from college. On social media, the mayor says he attended McNeese State University. The school says he enrolled for 1 semester and never graduated. The mayor hasn't told us if he attended any other schools. Mayors are not required to hold a degree or license to preside over court, but must complete annual training by the Louisiana Judicial College. Town Attorney Mike Holmes told us Mayor Alford has completed all mandatory training required, but records obtained from the state show Alford only submitted those documents to the state in late October, after we started asking questions.
For a judge not to have legal training is beyond my comprehension. I can't imagine a system anywhere else that has such a thing.
The training video urges mayors like Alford to leave the bench if their revenue from court is above 10%.
So what you'll want to do is go back and look to see what percentage of your annual budget constitutes the fines that are derived from mayor's court. If it's over 10%, then I would highly recommend that the mayor ask the city council, the board of aldermen, to appoint a magistrate, because if you're a mayor and you're handling mayor's court, you can be in a bind. And so if you're doing that, you can be held that you're violating people's constitutional rights.
Now, even in the training that this mayor got, it says it should be less than 10%. Any more than 10%, and you're violating people's constitutional rights. Remember, Fenton's at 90, so he doesn't care. He's like, Mom, so what? We're at 90. They said 10. Who cares? Now, there's a push to eliminate mayor's courts because it's so ripe for corruption. The town of Fenton literally depends on tickets and money they get from drivers whose rights they are overtly violating. It's a cash cow. It's so much of a cash cow that now when a state audit looked at the town's finances, they found that things weren't always on the up and up, and there was a lot of missing money. For instance, the mayor got an extra $15,000 on top of his salary, accidentally, of course. And when it was discovered, he had to pay it back. Check this out.
Right, new financial troubles identified in the latest audit of the village of Fenton. While it shows Mayor Eddie Alfred has paid back about half of what he owes the city after getting overpaid thousands back in 2016, there are new financial concerns. KPLC's Drew Marine breaks down the numbers.
The mayor tasked with paying back $15,000, missing traffic citation money, and adjusted utility bills.
Then the state auditor found that something like $5,000 in cash just up and vanished into thin air. And that money is essentially gone.
Compared cash payments received when they were recorded into the computer system versus cash that was actually deposited into the bank. And from May 4th of 2017 to July 31st of 2017, we found that the village received $5,195 in cash payments that were not deposited.
Investigative Audit Manager Greg Klipinski points to thousands in missing cash. Where did the money go? Even the state auditor's office doesn't know.
That money is gone, so I don't know what they're going to do about that.
The mayor even took care of his dad, wiping out a $1,000 utility bill for his father because he's the mayor.
Klipinski also says the village allowed residents to continue using their utilities even if they owed money. And one of those residents even got their late payments waived.
His father was delinquent on $1,694 in utility, on his utility bill, and the mayor allowed that account to be adjusted. So it was basically zeroed out, and his father was no longer responsible for that amount.
And the police chief also got an extra $20,000 in extra cash. Off the books, of course, and of course, it was by accident.
In addition to the mayor's overpayment in 2016, the audit reports Police Chief Luther Alfred got paid over $20,000 more than his allotted salary.
Because they didn't allow him, or they didn't pass a separate ordinance for him to actually earn overtime, then any overtime payments, we see that as them paying him in excess of the salary that they set by ordinance.
We're told whether the police chief will be required to pay back the money is up to the village.
Now, you may be thinking this is something that's new, that just occurred. But this has been happening since 2014 at least. 10 years. And here's a quick video when people were calling it out back then, when Fenton was still, again, making about 90% of its town finances from mayor's court.
And our investigative team found other courts here in Acadiana that ignore that precedent. I spoke to experts about how that can happen and why these courts are even allowed to operate. 20 Louisiana towns get more than 42% of their revenue from fines imposed by mayor's courts. That's more than the precedent in Monroeville, Ohio, and 3 are right here in Acadiana. Curiously, all are notorious speed traps. Topping the list in the entire state, in fact, is the Jeff Davis Parish town of Fenton. 89% of its revenue comes from fines imposed by mayor's court. Revenue experts say mostly consists of speeding tickets. Then there's Washington and St. Landry Parish, 71%, and Henderson and St. Martin Parish at 49%.
There's a major conflict constitutionally.
Chris DeLay is a criminal justice professor at UL specializing in courts and policy. He says the Supreme Court case from 1972, Ward versus Monroeville, is troubling for many mayor's courts in Louisiana.
Essentially, that's the same thing that's happening here in Louisiana. We just haven't had a case, or we haven't applied the constitutional rule from the Supreme Court to our state.
Now think about this. So many of these courts are literally breaking the law and violating people's constitutional rights. And they have been doing it for decades, it seems like. But what do you think? Do you think mayor's courts are fair? Now, you may ask, why hasn't someone sued about this whole mayor's court? It's obvious, right? You have the Supreme Court saying what they're doing is unconstitutional. Well, I think it's because lawyers are expensive, and it may just be simpler to pay a $200 fine than tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And I think that's why Fenton is allowed to blatantly break the law like this, right? This mayor is not neutral. His salary and his town depends on finding people guilty, and that's the problem. But let me know how you feel in the comment section. Let me know if you think mayor's court's a good thing, because Ohio and Louisiana are the only two states that have mayor's courts, which I also find fascinating. But they are directly in Louisiana violating people's constitutional rights in these courts, just so they can make a little extra buck. And it's great for Fenton. So I'm hoping if people start looking at videos like this and start finding out what's happening in these towns and seeing that millions of people's rights are just being violated willy-nilly by some local mayor who chooses to ignore the constitutional precedent set forth by the Supreme Court. Hopefully one day the good people in Louisiana, like the Attorney General, will wake up and say, we have to do something about this and hold these people accountable. But I'm not going to hold my breath. If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. Check us out on Locals. And for those of you who joined us on Locals and Patreon, thank you so much. Your support is really appreciated. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'll see you next time. Peace.